Hello, welcome to this video on how to design original torchon lace patterns. In 4 lessons, we will make pattern stamps, generate a design, turn that into a lace pattern, and solve problems. In this first lesson, we will make simple stamps that can set us up for pattern design. Lesson 1. Getting it together. Preparing easy to make pattern stamps. Using simple DIY stamps allows us to create new patterns to turn into lace projects. I showed some of these in my book Contemporary Lace for You, and I've devised some new ones for this course. We will show you how to design and cut your own stamps using materials readily available online. However, you don't need to invest a lot to get started. For example, you could use a potato instead of a plastic and foam stamp. To design your stamps, you will need a grid, tracing paper, pencils, scissors, and a glue stick. You can download a free grid from contemporarylace.com. To cut your stamps, you will need a craft knife, a cutting mat, some Speedball Easy Carve, and stamp handles. If you can't find some of these locally, they can be found online by searching for acrylic block stamp handles or Speedball Easy Carve. Later on in the process, you will also need a gel ink stamp pad, a pen, correcting fluid, a mirror tile or handbag mirror. Drawing pattern shapes. Now we will show you how to design some shapes for your stamp pads. First, take a copy of your printed out grid. Draw some squares on the diagonal to fit the size of your stamp pads. Typically, these will be about 40 mm, so the squares measure 13 dots along the side on 5 mm grid, which I'm using here, or 16 dots on 4 mm grid. If you draw vertical and horizontal guidelines, that will help you draw your squares. Draw freehand along the dots, because a ruler could slip offline. Once you've drawn your guidelines, it's just a question of drawing corner to corner. You don't need to count any more dots. And to draw up a full sheet, you just need to echo the shapes. Make some copies of the finished sheet to work on later. So, designing a stamp. To design the stamp, draw shapes inside a square, leaving space between each shape. Draw between the dots, leaving space between each shape, as you do when making torchon lace. The design I'm drawing here on 5 mm grid is based on one I've used in the past, and I'm drawing up motifs that spread over 2 dots or 1 space and 3 dots or 2 spaces. A similar design on 4 mm grid could use 2 dot, 3 dot and 4 dot wide motifs, which adds extra variety. This is what the finished design looks like. Having completed your first design, why not carry on drawing different shapes in each square to discover the possibilities? You will find that each one sets up an idea for another. Just keep going and do as many as you can. Making a stamp. To transfer your design to a stamp, first choose one of your designs. I'm choosing one here of a sheet of shapes drawn on 4mm grid, and cut the square out. Now you will need the cutting board, cutting knife, the Speedball Easy Carve, some glue and a stamp handle. Take your cutout shape and stick it onto the Speedball. I'm using paper glue, which is perfectly adequate for the whole process, although you could use something more permanent when it comes to sticking the Speedball onto the stamp handles. Cut the Speedball to the size of your square. You will see that I need to use a fair bit of effort, and this isn't because the Speedball is difficult to cut, far from it. It has the consistency of a sort of rubbery cheese, but it is quite thick, so you will need to press down to get your knife to the base of the block onto the cutting board. And be careful, of course, not to cut your fingers. Cut along the pattern lines. It may be slightly fiddly, but it's worth doing it slowly and carefully. And when you're cutting your stamp pad shape, don't throw away the offcuts because they will come in useful. When you've finished, reassemble the shapes and lift them onto the stamp handle. Then stick down the shapes. and then remove the offcuts. They just helped to position the shapes. So now you've made your stamp. We will show you how to turn it into a lace pattern. In the next lesson.